beautifully set up what I'm just about to talk about. A lot of his kind of philosophies are things that we sort of agree with and kind of use within Kahoot. And I'm going to talk about some of the impact from using Kahoot, which we launched at the end of August, so sort of 7 or 8 months ago, which we say we've never actually used the word gamification. We say game-based. It was designed as a game initially, and it is solving or encouraging and motivating several things within the classroom which perhaps educators struggled with in the past. So firstly, Kahoot, and it's really important to bear in mind that this is what we see the beginning of our journey. We only launched, several months ago, and we say it's like a PlayStation for education. It's a platform where you can launch educational games, learning games into the classroom on the screen at the front, and everyone on whatever device they've got can sign in very quickly with a game pin and a nickname, no account, and interact with the game. And then through gaming elements such as leaderboards, timers, music, all these things, it tells you how close you are to the nearest person in the classroom, are what's acting as the motivator to play that. So it really is a multiple choice quiz at the moment. I know we talked about multiple choice there, but it's important to remember that that game is what we call the hook. It's the initial engagement for something which down the line we see being much larger. But when you're starting up as a lean startup, running the processes that we're doing, you have to start off somewhere. And often the simplest way is the best way to get the initial penetration. So just a couple of stats before I move on. Since August, we've had, I believe, 1.4 million unique students around the world, which is in sort of 130 countries. At the moment, we're getting roughly 140,000 total users in a day, which is a combination of educators and learners. And that is, learners from the age of 4 all the way up to businesses and everything else in between are using exactly the same product. Here's a video from one of our users.
See who's in the lead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is a good password. I should always share my passwords with my parents. And your answer is...
So that was obviously very young students, exactly the same product being used in a university. And it's probably important to mention, particularly based on what Wayne was saying about educators and researchers as being part of the team. The initial engagement gaming concept has been researched for a couple of years at the Norwegian University of Technology and Science. The longer term learning and engagement and learning benefits have been proven through that research. So just very quickly, remember the same multiple choice quiz is being used in multiple contexts. So the initial thing it does is it creates engagement. Everyone in the classroom is all of a sudden focused on the content that is being taught. And that creates a trusted learning space. Our users say to us they get the student buy-in, meaning the student all of a sudden is on their wavelength, is performing, is doing the things that they're expected of them. So it's often used as a replacement for PowerPoint, for example. So at the beginning of a new topic, they'll play a Kahoot and they'll introduce that new topic. The educator can understand the current learning of everyone in the room. It's used for formative assessment. So you get the data from everyone in the classroom. You understand what current level they're at, and then you can adapt the learning based on that. I don't really like the term, but it's used as a reinforcer. So you can test the retention of knowledge through playing the same content or the same content in slightly different contexts. It facilitates discussions. So it becomes the tool whereby the educator can instigate communication between everyone in the classroom because the data is displayed on the screen. And it's a classroom management tool, so we've got users who are taking the whole hour-long lesson to teach their content. So they will take one multiple-choice question with only 4 answers, might take up to 10 minutes because they're really discussing the concepts behind that question. And also, it's just used for fun. You know, in the lead up to Christmas, for example, it was amazing to see the usage. Because the students just having fun. Students then take it away and use it at home, which, you know, I think for an educational platform, EdTech is actually quite rare. So we say that this multiple choice quiz that creates the game show experience in the classroom is our hook. It's the thing which we decided to design it in such a way that it's so fast to enter into a game. You just need to enter a game pin and a nickname that people get instant engagement. They get instant rewards through the gaming experience that they're having. And that's pretty important in a classroom setting because if something doesn't work, then you're going to stop using it. From a business perspective, that's obviously not what you want. But educators are looking at things which are low barrier to entry. So, you know, we get these kind of stories every sort of 10 minutes on Twitter or what have you from our users. But it kind of shows how these experiences are empowering the educator because the learners in their class are so engaged in their lessons all of a sudden. You know, they even threaten to kill them. And so educators are becoming the stars. They're the host of the game show, which is in the classroom. And this is an experience that, from our users that we speak to on a daily basis, is something they've never had before. Because everyone, it's an inclusive product, works on any device. Everyone is entering the game and focused entirely on the content. And, you know, I'm not sure kind of assessment ever usually looks like that. This is actually in Venezuela, which I thought was quite cool. And so this as an experience is, you know, as I say, it's really empowering the educators because they're all of a sudden having their students want to do the things which they have to do as part of education. They have to do these assessments. It's, you know, as Wayne was saying, we're not going to change the way education is at the moment. So we're trying to fit into that, and they have to perform these assessments. And this is actually motivating the students to want to do that. So here's just some more kind of stories from our users. I sat back in amazement as previously unengaged students started to explain concepts to the class in peer-led discussion. And this is part of our kind of inclusive philosophy. We want everyone in the classroom to be involved, and it provides some motivation for them to start talking to each other and actually discussing the content and reinforcing those concepts that they're being taught. It instills a sense of competitiveness into the most apathetic student. I've had a 20-point gain in assessments for my lowest performing students. So talking about rewards of game-based learning, these are rewards for the teacher as much as the students, because all of a sudden the assessments in their school, we've had whole schools come to us and say, since we've introduced Kahoot to our teaching, it's gone up by X amount, our grades. And this really is like a very, very powerful thing. And just a little kind of insight into how it works. At the moment, it's so simple that you just download the results at the beginning. So we obviously have all these plans going forward for creating new games on the platform, new ways to formatively assess your students, to track their progress over time, etc. But at the moment, it's as simple as downloading an Excel document, and that's providing so much value. So using this word gamification, our users say to us that Kahoot is allowing them to gamify their classroom. Wayne mentioned, and Kirsten mentioned, I think, about how it was a bit of a dirty word in education, but it's becoming more and more accepted. And what we've seen is that educators are actively seeking for ways to gamify their classroom now. For them, this is about them turning their classroom into games, and they find that Kahoot can be both an entry point because of its simplicity, but also a facilitator for those game-based classrooms. And the other thing is, it's allowing them to gamify their content, because the bit I haven't talked about yet, which I'm going to move on to, is the platform, the game creation area. And educators, you know, they're telling us things like they're putting humorous options into their games that the students are playing because it adds extra engagement. And so I think this idea of gamifying is not just about the learners, it's also about the educators, making them have fun in their teaching. When I proposed to several teachers that we might introduce official publisher content from, you know, Pearson or what have you, they were like, well, only if I can edit it myself and put in the funny pictures of cats that I like to put in. And this is kind of part of that philosophy, I think. And then this quote, I think, you know, is one of the great reasons why game-based learning is, you know, one of the reasons why game-based learning is so great. I feel that it helps me release the anxiety that so many learners face when the word test is uttered, and thus allows them to perform to the fullest of their potential. So, as I mentioned, these things they kind of have to be done in education at the moment. Let's provide the motivation and engagement that actually makes people not dread it, but want to do it, or even forget that they're doing it, which I think is kind of the power of games. And so this is kind of turned even into the point where they're providing prizes. Our users are providing prizes for their students, a massive trophy, or for big mamas over here, their big wrestling belt, or a dolphin, or a unicorn, as popped up literally just before I left for here. But you know, this kind of thing, this shows to us that our users are kind of actively seeking to provide these playful environments that Kahoot can facilitate. Or in America, donuts, apparently. So obviously, when you're a business, business things need to be taken into account. You know, we're actively seeking to create a sustainable business over time, which is because of the impact on learning. And the kind of game-based approach, I think, is a natural provider of retention of your product if you do it right, because the engagement and the rewards from it is so big that people are asking to do it over and over again. You know, this idea of begging to use it, begging to be assessed, basically, is something that I think is, you know, is for us is something that we're seeing spiraling our usage, and over time it's becoming deeper, which we're going to talk about next. So as I mentioned, we got the platform underneath it. So you create your learning games, which are then launched into the classroom or launched into the space that you're in. Currently, we've seen 160,000 plus learning games made. You can choose to make them private, so you keep them for yourself, or public, so you can share them with all the other users of the platform. Often our users will play a public one first. They'll get a feel for it. They'll see what it's about, and then they'll create their own. And that investment usually takes about 20 minutes on average, which is a significant amount of time. Educators don't necessarily have that much time in their lives to create this content. But the reason they tell us for that is because of the extreme reward they get at the end of it, which is the experience in the classroom. 30 plus students entirely engaged on what they're teaching. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about how we're seeing the usage become much deeper, which is something we've designed into the platform, and believe it's how we can kind of create more longevity and more deeper value over longer time. So we devised this pedagogy, which we call learner to leader, which is the idea of taking students on a journey through traditional learning. So the pedagogy is a combination of typical learning model, a gaming model, and a behavioral model combined together, which takes the student on this journey. So what I've talked about so far really is just the learner and the player bit. So in a typical classroom setting, they're taught the content, and in the Kahoot pedagogy, they play with the content, and that's all I've shown so far. But what we're encouraging, and we're increasingly seeing happen more and more, which requires much deeper investment in time, is this idea that students are becoming the game creators now, and they're sharing their games back with their classmates. So in a typical scenario, the teacher may have introduced the topic, let's say World War II, and then they'll set their students, probably in groups, the task of creating their own games, maybe on subtopics, different subtopics, so they can all get back together and play these games together and share the knowledge which they've gained through the research phase and they've created within our game creator, which they're entirely motivated to do because of the reward of the experience at the end, and they're learning along the way, they're gaining new knowledge. And you can actually, from an educator's perspective, you can get a lot of value from understanding where a student's knowledge is at this current moment in time based on the quality of questions they ask. And going back to the multiple choice thing, actually you gain a lot of information from the quality of the wrong answers as much as the right answers, because it shows a deeper understanding. So from a business perspective, this is showing a big behavior change in the classroom, which for us is, is amazing, because people are dedicating now a whole lesson, a whole hour lesson, or even a whole week to Kahoot. They're actually creating their own kind of papers and methodologies around it to fit directly into their lessons, and they're using Kahoot as the basis for assessing the knowledge of their students. I did an interview with a guy called Jake Duncan, who goes around, he's an educator in Texas and is a Kahoot user, and he goes around presenting at conferences, and he has this talk called A Quest for a Game-Based Classroom, and actually he talks about Zondel as well, so just check him out. But I kind of wanted to find out how he uses Kahoot and how his quest for this game-based classroom is having impact on both himself and his learners. So his district in Texas, they do project-based learning. So at the end of every project, the students have to deliver it back through presentations and other material. And he gives them the choice, what do you want to deliver your project back through? And more often than not, they choose Kahoot. So he said students do their research together. They create their projects in groups and present their findings, creations, and knowledge back through Kahoot. So it becomes a collaborative thing. They choose Kahoot because of the creative nature and reward of playing at the end. Also, because it's collaborative, they can work together and each person takes on a different role. So he's encouraging this kind of teamwork, this collaboration, but giving them flexibility to choose what they want to deliver their content back to their class, so their projects. So they then get to stand at the front and take on the role of the teacher and play that quiz back. So for us, this is kind of providing these deeper investments. Our users are actively changing their behaviors. So students actively discussing content to create challenging Kahoot for peers. Yeah, that's a win. So, this is providing facilitating these discussions, which they don't often have because there's nowhere to provide these discussions. And by far, Kahoot has inspired students this year. They create in it, play, develop their own games. They critically think and don't realize they're learning, which is probably the biggest thing you can take away from that. And I guess game-based learning in general. And yeah, he says more about this guy. This guy's great. And then another one of our users shared with us how he actually assesses the Kahoots which are created. So this is kind of how he sets out his assessment. You will create a Kahoot quiz covering your favorite or best core class, using 10 carefully crafted questions covering one of your favorite topics from a particular class, and have at least 10 players play and rate your quiz. So he's giving them the flexibility to create content on what they want. He's learning a lot from that. But what he's doing is almost gamifying that process by incentivizing them to create the ultimate Kahoots. In our minds as a business, we like seeing the most perfect Kahoots made because we can feature them. It makes our platform look even better if people are creating the best content. And often the best content does rise to the top anyway because people discover it and play it. And, you know, he wants to see that because he's been teaching them how to ask a good question. And then he's assessing them on the quality of the questions they're asking and everything else that they're embedding in it, which is you can embed pictures and videos, etc. And another user, in addition to the benefits of this interactive and inquiry-laden method of learning for my students, there was another bonus for me. I learned a great deal that day about what things my students were interested in and how they thought. So this idea of games and game creation and giving them the flexibility to create things which motivate and interest them is allowing educators to actually understand a lot more about their students, which, as they tell us, is very powerful for them. And so going back to Jake Duncan, he kind of sort of reaffirmed this to me when I spoke to him. He said the main thing for me is that it provides differentiation. It allows me to work individually with students, focus on their specific needs rather than speaking to the middle. And my teaching is based on personal interest and understanding what they really like to get out of the class. Then they become more interested. Game-based learning is about personalization, and Kahoot allows that. So he's really getting a deep understanding of his students because they're motivated by the game and they're motivated to create content and focus and research on the things which get them excited. And so, yeah, as I've mentioned before, from our perspective, business-wise, the game element of it, the experience that gaming creates, is basically encouraging our users to just talk about us all the time. And this is where we're seeing our growth, is just through kind of word of mouth, through people speaking to us at conferences. 2 years ago, we went to South by Southwest EDU. This year, I didn't go, but my business partners went. And the first session, they presented Kahoot. Even over support, which, you know, dreaded support ticket, some people just kind of message us to say, you know, thank you. And so for us, I'm not saying this to like boast, I'm just saying how from a business perspective, the gaming side of it is really crucial because it provides such deep rewards that users want to share you. They feel compelled to share you. Yeah, I think I hate Kahoot. For me, and by the way, you probably can't see it, but she's 933 points behind someone who's called themselves "You Suck, Bro." But for me, this is just showing that people care. If they've taken the time to tweet out their scores, and she actually got the question correct, it's showing that they care, and the gaming is making them want to share. Oh, sorry, before I share that. This lady is who Johan met at South by Southwest EDU. He took off his jumper and saw the Kahoot t-shirt, probably in slow motion, and she ran over to him and felt compelled to tell her story. And she probably tells the benefits of this game-based approach, both from our perspective as a business, the school's perspective, much better than I could. So hopefully you can hear it, and hopefully it's not frozen.
About the last 10 days, we've had all over my school sort of a viral, very organic explosion of Kahoot. And a lot of times you have teachers who are reluctant to use new technology. And so this started with a teacher's kid as a student. And they experienced Kahoot, went home, told the parent starts talking to other teachers that are doing it. And then the parent's like, oh, well, I want to do it too. And then another parent was like, oh, well, my 7th grader's doing it. And then it all just spiraled and blossomed, and the whole school is sort of on fire right now with Kahoot. We've had very few problems. We've had very low beginning level, like you can easily get on, you can easily create something. The kids love the game aspect of it. As soon as the teacher says, okay, I've got a Kahoot, they're like, yeah! So a teacher has a...
So yeah, she said it much better than me and in much less time. And so we say to be in Kahoot for a better education. That's because we're on a journey. We're only just starting out, as I say. multiple choice quiz is really just the beginning to something much bigger. And I feel like our users are kind of helping us on this journey, and so they're joining us basically. That's it. I probably overspoke.
Okay, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I haven't been to your website, so I don't understand your business model. Can you just summarize that for me?
We don't have one. No. So we're running as a lean startup, and for us to have the impact that we want, we're giving it away for free. So what you see today and more will always be free. In the background, we're devising different hypotheses around how to monetize the platform. But we're building up a community of users who are kind of joining us on our journey, and we have plenty of ideas, put it that way.
Thank you. Okay, where was the one back here?
Hi, I was just wondering, you said that you're at kind of the beginning of your journey, and I was just wondering if you could shed a little bit of light on where you see this kind of going. What's your kind of like some of the kind of dreams and aspirations at Kahoot?
It's good because I actually did a talk on that last week, and it's still a bit in my head. So, for us, we're doing this because of our passion for education, for having impact in areas of the world that we care about. I'm actually a designer, I didn't even mention that. And so I myself measure success based on impact, both through the metrics, but also through all the stories that we're getting every day. Going forward, it's a platform. It's a platform for multiplayer social games around kind of knowledge in the classroom and outside the classroom as well. But they're real time and they're social. They create this experience that, is a lot of people tell us they've never seen before. So for us, it's about creating a place where educators and learners are connecting through these learning games, which are then launched to create this experience in the classroom. So as I say, that is just the first game. We see many, many more which follow these philosophies.
Hi, that was great. My question was, Wayne has approached us as an educator. Do you have an education background? I think you said you're a designer, so probably not. And what is your experience in that case been going, hey, I'm entering a new sector, I'm not from education, etc. What's that been like?
Well, first thing to say is I've learned a hell of a lot. So we have educator in our team, the inventor of the gaming concepts. Also, I think it's really important to say that user-centered designers, they understand people, and there's a lot of value in that when creating a business. So whilst I'm not an educator, and I do lecture and teach as well, around kind of design and behavior design, but the combination of having an educator in our team and a team who are design thinkers, I think is actually quite powerful, because you've got the appreciation for people and understanding of them, their lives, how your products and services fit into their lives, and then you have the educator as well who we work directly with for a learning benefit, but also because designers measure based on impact, as I said previously. What is the impact with an educational product? It's the things that people are telling us. It's the measuring of the learning outcomes. It is measuring of engagement within the classroom. Whatever your product's meant do. And also, actually, a lot of that's already been proven through the research at the university for several years. And we couldn't actually do what we're doing now whilst that research was being proven because the technology wasn't right. Because even though it's very simple, it's very complex under the hood. And now kind of web-based technologies are allowing us to do this far more. So, yeah, I think a combination of design thinking and learning design thinking combined is quite powerful.
Getting quite a lot of interest on Twitter about the national makeup of your team. Got a Finnish guy going, I thought they were American, having seen their presentation at South by Southwest. Could you say a little bit about the background of the team and a little bit more about the research behind Kahoot?
Well, I'm the only non-Norwegian of the co-founders. One of the Norwegians is just sitting there. Yeah, so a little bit about the story. The professor in our team is, he's a leading education and game designer in Norway. He's called Alf Inge Wang. He's a great guy. He's actually living in California at the moment. So he spent, as part of his research, he was sat in a cinema one day and thought, oh, there's a massive screen here and loads of people waiting around. And I've got a phone in my hand. Can I do something? Could I interact with that screen? Being a big, gamer of consoles, etc. himself. And he started just prototyping stuff. Meanwhile, he also lectures to 300 people plus in a lecture. And, as we all, probably most people here have been to university, not everyone is focused on the lecture. And I actually went and sat in one of his lectures, and there was people watching football. There was people on Facebook. It is a problem. So he was like, well, how can I combine this thinking from the cinema with my lecture? He played a lot of Buzz on PlayStation and, sort of put two and two together and came up with this. That was a prototype he called Lecture Quiz, which, if I'm being honest, was not that good. I think he would probably be honest and say that as well. But the benefits of it and the concept, absolutely, completely proven. I remember the first time I played it when we were in San Francisco. I was like, there is something in this. It's so much fun. And also I'm learning. I can't even remember what the quiz was about. So anyway, the TTO, the Technology Transfer Office at the university, approached myself and Johan, who actually run another business in London called We Are Human, which is a behavior design business, because they'd seen Johan speak about play, the idea of play, and learning and using that for kind of motivation and engagement. And said, we've got these kind of ideas, can you help us out, basically? We need someone who's got the knowledge and experience of bringing businesses to market, which is essentially what we do. We help startups and existing businesses launch their product through design thinking. And so after a bit of kind of pivoting, as they say in the startup world, this is where we ended up. So we created the brand, we've created the technology again from scratch, with our CTO, who actually, who's one of the co-founders based in Oslo, who actually was kind of testing and developing this stuff as part of his master's project back in 2005. So yeah, we're all Norwegian apart from me, and our lead developer in London. So yeah.
So if I was to kind of just simplify Kahoot as like a collaborative assessment defining product, it's not learning in itself. It's not imparting knowledge from an instructor to a student. It's actually kind of putting game element to knowledge that has been imparted. What's your feedback been about how teachers have actually been imparting teaching? And I'm thinking here, to me, kind of Kahoot seems like a nice complement to the flipped classroom. So the idea that you can learn on your own outside the classroom, and in the classroom, it's about the game, it's about the play, it's about more the merrier. So I don't know if that's come up in your thinking already.
Summarize the question in one sentence. Just so how about the benefits, learning benefits. Yeah, sure. So I mean, as I mentioned at the beginning, there's so many different ways, because the amazing thing when you create a bit of technology, which really is just technology, there's no innovation in the technology itself, is in the application and the usage of it. You know, if you look at Twitter, classic example, is used in so many different ways, it's ridiculous. I'm not sure they imagined all those ways at the beginning. So for us, it's just a framework for content to be delivered in a game-based way. And so it's being used as a way of introducing. And you have to bear in mind, it's not just technology. There's an educator standing at the front of the room facilitating the whole experience, or a student, as I mentioned. And then the discussions happen amongst people. So the technology is facilitating the experience. It's providing the opportunity for that knowledge to be transferred however way it gets transferred based on those people, because at the end of the day, everyone is different. So I don't know if that's answered your question, but for us, it just happens in many, many ways. Okay, so more tangibly, how it works. Yeah. Yeah, so it really depends on what content is being taught, because it's a framework. It's a framework, meaning that any content of any ability and any subject of any language can appear in it, and I think that's kind of where we've seen some of the growth, is because of that flexibility. It allows you to create your own games based on what you're teaching. Typically, that happens through the discussion in the classroom. So, for example, if you ask a question on something where there is 4 potential answers and an image, which probably most likely that image explains a concept of some sort. So it might be factual, but it might be about a concept. When that is displayed to everyone in the classroom, and when you get an understanding of how many people in the classroom think this or think that or think this, it provides a basis to kind of discuss those concepts. And that's really where we see, you know, it's as good as you are, if that makes sense. It's not going to just solve the work, you know, issues in the classroom. This is why we see our community, so we find them so amazing, is because they're the ones who are making it better. So again, I don't know if that's answered your question, but hopefully it's...
We have to wrap up.
Okay.
Sorry, but thank you very much.